everyone. Today we're going to be talking about slope-intercept form. Make sure you're copying all your notes on your foldable. Your foldable needs to be completely filled out, just like mine. A reminder, this is part of your test grade. All right, so the first part says identify the slope and the y-intercept in each of the graphs below. Compare it to the equation of the line. What do you notice? So the last time we were in class, we talked about slope and we talked about the y-intercept. We said that when we have a graph, our slope is when we take the rise over the run. So on our graph, we do have our 2 points. They gave it to us. So we're going to count our rise and we're going to count our run. So I can see 1, 2, 3, and I went up for that, so that's going to be a positive 3. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I went to the right, so that's going to be a positive 5. So for my slope, my rise was positive 3, and my run was positive 5. So the slope of this line is 3/5. And then we talked about on a graph, the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. And we said that the coordinate for that is going to be 0, 1, 2. That is where it's going to cross. So 0, and then we went down 2 because we're going down. That's going to be -2. So our y-intercept, 0, -2. So we did the first part. We identified the slope and the y-intercept, and now we're going to compare it to the equation of our line. So here is our equation. Y equals 3/5 x minus 2. And what I noticed is that 3/5 was our slope, and I noticed that the -2 was my y-intercept. Okay, so let's go ahead and find our slope and our y-intercept on number 2 and see if they also are in the equation that they give us. All right, so again, on our slope, we're going to need to count our rise and our run. So for this one, I'm going 1, 2, 3, and I went up, so that's going to be a positive 3. And then I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I went those 6 to the left, so that's going to be a -6. So again, slope is rise over run, and I did positive 3 over -6. Now I can simplify that. I can divide both of those numbers by 3. And I know that 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. And this was a -6, so I am going to make sure that that is a -1/2 for my slope. So slope, -1/2. Okay. So for our y-intercept, I'm going to highlight that y-axis again. It just helps me because it does make the y-axis stick out. And when I look, I see that it's at the point the graph crosses at 0, 1, 2, 3. Again, that was the coordinate 0 and a positive 3 this time. So when I go to compare it to my equation, I can see that my slope comes attached to the x. It's being multiplied to the x. And my y-intercept comes after the x. All right, so that's what I do notice. In both equations, that's what happens. Now, on our formula charts, it does say slope-intercept form, and it gives us this equation, y equals mx plus b. And if we look at the problems we just did, we noticed that m was our slope and b was our y-intercept. Okay? So we're going to use this equation throughout the rest of this foldable. So number 1 gives us a graph, and it asks for our slope and our y-intercept, and then we need to make it into the slope-intercept form equation. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to just make my triangle. Okay. And again, slope is going to be rise over run. So 1, 2, and I went up, so it's a positive 2. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to the right, so that's going to be a positive 8. So my rise is 2, my run is 8. But I can simplify this. I can divide both of those numbers by 2. So 2 divided by 2 gives me 1, and 8 divided by 2 gives me 4. Now for my y-intercept, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just highlight that y-axis. You are allowed to use highlighters on the STAR test. So if you raise your hand, you can ask your teacher, and she should have highlighters if you want to use them to help you. So for my y-intercept, I need to see where it crosses that y-axis. So I'm at 0, -1, -2, -3. So that coordinate would be 0, -3. So when I go to put this in slope-intercept form, remember that's talking about y equals mx plus b. So y equals m was my slope, so 1/4 x, and then my b, my y-intercept, is that y-coordinate, that -3. Now for number 2, it is a little different. We have a table instead of a graph. So instead of using rise over run, I'm going to be using change in y over my change in x. So I see from -3.5 to -2, I'm going to add 1.5, and I'm just going to double check and verify. -3.5 plus 1.5 equals -2. So I did that correctly. And then to see how my x's changed, I went from -2 to 0. So I know that -2 plus 2 gives me 0. So my change in y is 1.5 over my change in x. Here's my x's, and we added 2. Now I am going to go ahead and simplify that. So 1.5 divided by 2, and that will give me 0.75. And then I'm going to find my y-intercept on my table. And when we were working on the graphs, the y-intercept was the coordinate 0 and then whatever number it was. So on all the problems we've done so far, our x value was 0. So if I look at my table, I do have 0 there. and it matches here with the -2. So my y-intercept is at 0, -2. So that helps me when I'm going to write the equation. I'm going to put y equals slope, because slope is my m, so 0.75x, and then my y-intercept is -2. Okay. I would like you to try these next two examples on your own. Okay, so for number 3, I'm going to find my slope, pick any two dots, any 2 points on that graph. So 1, 2, and I went up, so that's a +2. And then 1 to the left, so that's a -1. So my rise was 2, my run was -1. And I know that that simplifies to -2. Then I need my y-intercept. So here's my y-axis, and I can see that my graph is crossing at the point 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So my y-intercept would be 0, 4. And when I write that equation, y equals m, or slope, is -2x. And then remember, your y-intercept is b, and that's going to be a +4. Then for my table, number 4, I get 3 to 1. To go from 3 to 1, I subtract 2. And then to go from 2 to 3, I added 1. So when I do change in y over change in x, I get -2 over +1. And hey, it simplifies to the same thing. Slope is going to be -2. Now remember, on a table, we need 0 in our x column. So I'm going to have to go backwards to do that. So instead of adding 1, I'm going to subtract 1. So 2 minus 1 gives me 1. And then I have to do that again to get to 0. So I'm going to do 3. And instead of subtracting 2, because I'm going backwards, I'll add 2. So 3 plus 2 gives me 5. And I need to do that one more time. So 5 plus 2 gives me 7. All right, so my y-intercept, there's my x being 0, is going to be 0, 7. So when I write my equation, y equals slope, remember, is m, so -2x, and then my y-intercept is b, and that's a +7. All right, so now we're going to be given an equation, and we're going to graph it. So there's 3 steps when doing it. And our first step is going to be to plot the y-intercept. So if I look at this example here, we need to remember y equals mx plus b. So my y-intercept is this -1. So I'm going to go to 0 and down to -1. And that was step 1. Then step 2 is going to be use slope. All right, so we're going to use the slope. So we're going to use the slope to create a new point or another point on our graph. Okay, another point. So in our equation, our slope is 2 over 3. And remember that slope is rise over run. So I'm going to rise 2, and it's a positive 2, so I'm going to go up. And I'm going to run 3, and it's a positive 3, so I'm going to go to the right. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. There is my new point. So now I can do step 3. And step 3 is to connect the dots. And that is going to give me my graph. I'm going to be fancy and make an arrow. All right. There we go. Those are the 3 steps when we are given an equation and we're going to make a graph from it. So we're going to try 2 more examples. And we need to remember our steps. So step 1 was to plot our y-intercept. So I remember that my y is after the x, my y-intercept is after the x, and it's the coordinate 0, -4. So I'm going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then again, step 2 is to use my rise and my run or my slope to make a new point. It's a positive 1, so I'm going to go up 1, and then a positive 3, so to the right 3. So up 1, 1, 2, 3. And then step 4, I'm going to connect my dots. Please try example number 2 on your own. All right. So step 1 was to plot our y-intercept. On this one, it'll be the point 0 and positive 3. So I'm going to go to 0, 1, 2, 3. Now, my slope on this problem, if I try to do rise over run, I don't have a denominator. Okay, but when we divide anything by the number 1, we get itself. So my rise is -5. So my rise is going to be -5, and my run is going to be 1. So -5 tells me that I'm going to go down, and +1 tells me I'm going to go to the right. So from my y-axis or y-intercept, going down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to the right 1. And then the last thing, I just need to connect my dots. And I have my line. I'm going to stop there and I'm going to let you get to work. So we are not going to do number 3 and number 4. If you would like to try them on your own, you're more than welcome to, but I'm not going to show the answers for those. And I would like you to please start your independent practice. Thank you.